Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today I'm very honored to speak about BlockCloud. BlockCloud essentially is a blockchain-based, service-centric network stack. It's all about the TCP/IP architecture for connecting every dot on the blockchain and beyond. To do this further, we have very fortunate to have the CEO in the house. His name is Zhongxing. Zhongxing, thank you very much for your time today.
Hi, Brad. This is Zhongxing Ming, founder of BlockCloud, and I'm very honored to be interviewed by you. And I'm also very honored to present BlockCloud to the audience. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, mate, and thank you very much for staying up late. I understand it's quite late over where you are. Now, obviously, we are talking about BlockCloud. A lot of people have been talking about that, but let's get right down to the point. You claim that you are the TCP/IP layer, the layer 0 for the blockchain. Can you explain to us exactly why you can make that claim?
Sure. Because we are basically doing a slim overlay between the IP layer and TCP layer and the TCP layer and the the application layer. That is, we improve the current TCP protocol to make applications directly connect to service names rather than IP address. In this way, applications do not have to manage the dynamic mechanisms and diversity of the underlying IP addresses. It just connects to a unique and stable and unchanged service ID and leave the management of the IP address down to the network itself.
I see. So essentially what you're talking about is you're establishing an agnostic design, one in which is a platform for other protocols to function on top of that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about that in the context of the space right now. We've seen a few layer zeros come forth, and I just want to cut to the chase and ask you directly, what sets you apart fundamentally from those other layer 0 protocols? What makes you different and what makes you exceptional, if in fact that's what you are?
I don't think there are existing layer 0 blockchain solutions in TCP layer.
Okay.
So the network stack, there were 5 layers in the OSI TCP/IP architecture, and at the transport layer, I believe we are the only matured blockchain technology in this layer currently.
I see. So Zhongxing, let's talk about that a bit more. Now you mentioned the matured layer 0 blockchain technology. Now, can we talk about what you mean by matured in the sense of establishment, in the sense of how long you've been building this design?
Yeah, of course. So blockchain, we don't think blockchain is a completely new technology. We believe it's a very smart combination of existing network technologies. And we are building a blockchain-based service-centric networking, and we have been doing study in service-centric networking for 10 years. So since my PhD program, and we have published about 80 publications in top top tier conferences and journals.
I see. So top tier journals and academic groups around the world. You've done publications and you've recognized your name's recognized in those journals as one of the key authors. Is that right?
Not only me, but I have some publications. My other team members have also have publications. So together we are a team, not just by myself.
I see.
And we have done a lot of research in this field, and our team members consist of experts in P2P networks, large-scale distributed networks, decentralized database, and internet architecture.
Yes.
Yes. So
yes, and Zhongxing, we're going to talk about that more, your team, because quite simply, when you do have a look at the breadth and scope of your team, it's larger than your typical team that you do see on the blockchain and certainly in other projects. But if we could talk now about the motivations behind it as well, like you've alluded to some of the things in your building of this project, and certainly you've mentioned it's been a longitudinal one with several years of experience.
Yes.
But what was the fundamental reason why you did build BlockCloud in the sense of motivation or problems you saw?
That's a very good question. So we have been studying service-centric networking for about 10 years, but there are two fundamental problems that we cannot solve properly. One is to provide trustability to the network, and another is to provide an incentive for service providers to publish the service into the network. So we haven't got good solutions for that until we found blockchain.
Right.
Yes. So we are combining the advantage of blockchain to future internet architecture to make service-centric networking better.
Okay, well, let's explore that a bit further now. You claim that you're service-centric. For those people who are used to perhaps focusing on a product-based or perhaps focusing on protocols and framework layers, can you tell us more about the movement towards service, as the focus, and why being a service-centric design is really the key?
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. So can we have a brief recall of the history of the internet?
Sure.
So 45 years ago, the internet was designed by with the requirement for the U.S. military to define the nuclear attack from the Soviet Union. And at that time, the telecommunication system, like phone calls, are not sufficient because it's very centralized, and some of the central points will be destroyed in the nuclear attack. So the U.S. Army did need very reliable communication way for the military commands.
Yes.
So they built the TCP/IP. But at that time, there are some several assumptions which are not valid today. They are the internet was used to connect military posts, but there were not so many command posts at that time, and the command post didn't move at all, and the TCP/IP didn't need to provide any trustability to the network because the identification of the communication to ends were guaranteed by the military itself, and the fundamental requirement of the network is the telecommunication between two endpoints. Right. But now everything has changed, so you have millions, tens of millions of devices connect to the network. They're very diverse, dynamic, and always moving. And in the future, if you are facing the time of IoT, there will be trillions of devices, very diverse.
Yes.
And the fundamental requirement of people now are enjoying the service rather than talking to the end hosts. For example,
so can I just interrupt you for one moment there, respectfully? Now, just for those who may not be aware, what we're actually talking about is the history of the internet's evolution. We're talking about the iterations progressed from the first original state, which was in a military situation, which was essentially an intranet rather than an internet structure by design, in that they did have the first exemplars of the TCP/IP, which have evolved into the World Wide Web, and we know it as the internet. But what Zhongxin's now talking about is one step beyond, as I understand, and looking at how the internet can really couple with the blockchain.
So I will go to this shortly. So I have almost reached there.
Sure.
Okay. So yes. So currently, you do want to communicate with service rather than who is providing the service or where the service is. For example, if you use YouTube to see a movie, you really do not care about who is providing the movie or where the movie is. You just care about the movie, whether the movie is you want and whether the movie is smooth or clear. So you do need the applications to directly talk to services rather than the provider behind the service. So in this way, we need service-centric networking. We make service providers publish service to the network, and the users subscribe the service from the network, but the providers and the users do not need to know each other in advance. But if you do so, how can you guarantee that the service provided to the network are trustable?
Right. Well, let's talk about that. How can you? And once again, why is it that what is the core benefit of having the user be able to access the service so readily and so directly?
because if you connect to an IP address, if it is moving, your connection is down. Because originally TCP assumes that the communicating ends didn't move. So if you move, the connection must be closed, and you must reconnect to the end. That is, your user experience will be very bad.
I see.
So, okay. So for service-centric networking, despite you are moving, despite the IP addresses are dynamic, it doesn't matter. You just connected to a reliable and stable service ID, and as long as the service exists, your connection is always remained. So that provides much better user experience. And in some of the scenarios, like you must have the experience that if you are in the high-speed train, your internet is very bad. This is because you're always moving. But if you connect to a service, so your connection will be much better.
I see. Well, thank you for explaining the reason why you are service-centric and why arguably you're focused on that in ways that perhaps other layer 0 protocols or those that are focused on layer 0 and TCP are not doing so. But certainly there are some out there, Zhongxing, I would encourage you to go and look at them, that there certainly are some that are claiming that they are also TCP layer 0 protocols that are coming. Now, if we can talk about essentially the holistic design that you are, in a nutshell, tell us exactly what your plan is, as an architecture and as an overview of what BlockCloud is trying to do.
BlockCloud is a blockchain-based advanced TCP IP that provides constant connectivity for dynamic networks. We do it by combining the blockchain technology and service-centric networking. So the service-centric networking provides the upper-layer applications the ability to directly talk to services rather than IP address. And the blockchain underneath the service-centric networking guarantees that the services in the network are trustable, and whenever the service provider is accessed by a user, the service provider can get benefit. So the service provider have incentive to publish service to the network. And we do this. We do need blockchain because we haven't got any large-scale distributed system can fully provide the ability of trust and incentive to the whole network. But blockchain can.
I see. So what you're arguing is that the capacity for it to really have the global scope via distribution is really potentiated through the blockchain. So let's discuss a little bit more now about the core advantages. Now, you've alluded to some. If you could tell us in some key points, what are the fundamental advantages for doing this? Obviously, one is the distribution itself, as opposed to pre-existing more centralized mechanisms and projects, or even the fundamental designs like Google. We even see that as a platform that's centralized to offer, a multitude of services.
Yes. So we are doing it as a layer 0 solution. So it's a universal overlay that supports all kinds of applications. But if you do have such kind of ideas in something like Amazon or Akamai or Google, but they can only support the specific applications in their business, but not the whole internet. So we do want to provide the universal overlay to basically support all the kind of applications.
I see. So let's explore that a bit more. So you're saying that with Google, with Amazon, they have in-house mechanisms and systems that really only apply to them. So in that respect, they function more as a sort of private system. So what you're suggesting is that not only are you trying to be agnostic by design in your universal approach, but you also want to be one in which could potentially be utilized by all different companies, essentially, including Google. Would that be right? And including Amazon?
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about how that would be possible?
Yes, because so currently how Google and Amazon do is that they build something in the application layer. So they didn't do anything to the TCP layer. So TCP is still what it's like. to achieve their goals, they do something in the application layer or build some overlay in the application layer. But if you do a layer zero solution, so they do not need to do those kind of things. They just use what BlockCloud provides, and this.
That's really interesting. So what if they do, though, Zhongxing? What if they do decide to do something like you? Obviously, with their kind of the kind of capital that they have behind them and the brand that they have, is it possible that they could go out and do their own layer zero? And then what would happen to BlockCloud?
Yes, that's a very good question. So from one hand, we believe that our team has the most talented academic people in this field. So we not only by me, but we have about 20 professors and many PhDs in this field. I believe we are the first tier academic group. And another thing is that we are supported by a ISP. So if you want to do a TCP layer IP thing, you do need the support of ISP. And we have been, so our group, my advisor and my advisor's advisor, I'm the third generation. We have been involved in establishing one of the ISPs in China, that is CERNET, China Education and Research Network, which is the world's largest education network and the world's largest IPv6 network. Okay,
so the world's largest education network, that's really significant. And that kind of answers the question, you know, if we're talking about this in terms of a competition, which obviously it's not, but certainly you're well positioned as in pole position, arguably, as this TCP IP leader. Even if Google or Amazon did come forth, what you're suggesting, what I'm hearing from you, is that you argue that you are one of the leaders, but given your background, given your team, given the academic prowess, and you're confident that you could certainly be within that elite group that can lead this out.
Yes.
Interesting. So let's talk now about use cases as well, Zhongxing, because obviously you have to have applications for this to be of real value. Tell us a bit about the plans in terms of smart value.
So because BlockCloud is designed for providing constant connectivity for dynamic networks, we believe that in dynamic scenarios we are better. And we can provide some examples like automatic driving cars in the future. So many automatic driving cars using the internet to exchange road information, navigation information, and maybe entertainment information like music and movies all the time. So huge number of cars and huge number of messages spreading. And this scenario, the current TCP IP is definitely not sufficient for supporting them. And BlockCloud will, from the technical side, provide very good connectivity between the cards, and from the business side, incentive the content providers to provide services. This is a scenario. Another scenario might be live streaming, like I don't know whether there's such kind of applications in Australia, but in China there are many such kind of applications to record live streaming and publish to the...
Yes, it's actually, I've seen that done in China. It's extremely popular.
Yeah, it's extremely popular, but currently if you are moving or the network is dynamic, the quality of the streaming is very bad. But now you can use BlockCloud to share with a very good connectivity for the streaming service and spread to the audience. And also you can, from the business side, directly earn tokens or earn benefit from that. As a very good example. Another thing might be some online games in the future, like VR or AR. So live AR games. So you have the screen of others, and very much like the popular movie, maybe 3 months ago. I forgot his name. And
I see. So you're talking about key use cases. You've given some examples of how it could be applied in the home with smart smart software, even smart hardware, smart vehicles, smart gaming. So there's some interesting applications that are potentially you're moving into. But I want to also now talk to you and move back to Google for a moment. The reason why is because you've got me thinking about whether or not Google would be interested in you, because if they don't have to reinvent the wheel, let's talk about potential partnerships as well. Have you spoken to companies like Google? Have you spoken to Amazon? Have you told them what you're doing? And are they interested?
Yes, but we haven't talked to Amazon or Google, but we did talk to a number of IoT device companies and sensor companies, and they are very interested in it because from one hand, they can get better user experience or even the ability to new business that cannot currently supported by the current internet. From another perspective, they can explore new business model by using BlockCloud. Like we actually operated a IoT company for years, and that company sell wearable devices and smart home devices and vehicle-to-vehicle communication modules, and with annual sale of 2 million to 3 million devices all over the world. Currently, we have 8 million users around the world, and by this business, we have collaborated with a number of IoT devices and manufacturers, like MTK, like Nordic, like TI, like Dialog. So and they are IoT sensor chip manufacturers, and also other product companies like.
It's okay. I mean, I'm sure there are several. I mean, it's late for you to remember them.
Because we have talked to them a lot, and many of them are very interested and have some of them have signed a contract with us to move their existing applications to BlockCloud when the mainnet of BlockCloud is deployed.
Right.
So
we'll talk about that in the timeline as well in the roadmap. But I did want to ask you again. I want to harp back to IoT, and the reason is because for some time now, many people have perhaps misconstrued you as an IoT project. I want to clarify that. What is the distinction between the TCP/IP layer that you are professing to be and this core focus on IoT that you do have?
Yeah. So we did mention IoT a lot, but BlockCloud was not designed particularly for IoT. So literally everything can run over BlockCloud, and BlockCloud can run over everything. So why we mentioned IoT a lot is because most of the case, IoT is a very large scale and very dynamic than current static internet. So in those scenarios, we believe that current internet is not sufficient, and we want BlockCloud to support them. But BlockCloud can also support non-IoT applications like streaming services, like content distribution, like BitTorrent. Yes.
I see. So you've made it really clear that fundamentally, once again, is that these different applications are built upon the TCP/IP layer 0 of BlockCloud, and predominantly IoT is the focus, but certainly not the only one. So let's now talk about some of the partners specifically that support all of this in terms of your strategic partners. Who are backing you? Who are supporting you? And can you tell us why some of them are? Are there any interrelationships you're planning with some of these strategic partners?
Yes, of course, from different perspectives. So one very strong partner behind us is Cernet. So we have been operating this Cernet for years, 30 years. And this is ISP. Another is industry collaborators from various perspectives, both IoT enterprises and traditional internet companies like some streaming service providers in China and also in Korea. And another is we have very strong academic support from top universities around the world, like Tsinghua University, Tokyo University, Peking University, and Princeton, and the UC Berkeley.
Mm-hmm. And can I just interrupt you for a moment there? Because the reason I just want to really direct about this is that in the past, when I've studied different projects and when I've connected with some of them, I've noticed that there's a propensity for some to essentially buy their way into universities, to espouse the idea of support via negotiation. So I want to ask you: is BlockCloud different in the sense that are you really focused on a more organic approach? Based on the quality of your protocol, or have you in fact negotiated with any of these academic stakeholders or these academic professors in different regions to get them on board?
Yes, they're really on board because.
But are they on board naturally because of interest and because of your code and your quality of your project, or are they on board because you've offered them in any way some sort of allocation or anything like that?
Allocation is my thing, but it's not because allocation. It's because we are the colleagues doing service-centric networking and internet research long before the BlockCloud came out.
Okay.
So we've been collaborating for many years.
So that's important. I don't mean to be rude. I just want to be really direct with you. So what you're saying is that the interest from the academics that you work with to build BlockCloud had the premise, had the interest, and had the desire to collaborate well before the economic value that is built that underpins the BlockCloud design.
Yes. So we have been collaborating long ago for starting the internet technology, and the reason why we are collaborating in BlockCloud is that we both think BlockCloud is promising, and there are many academic potential work in BlockCloud that is very interesting, and they want to be involved in it.
I see.
To more research.
I see. And that's really important for us as an audience, because we want to know that the academics, because we rely on everything that we read and see, we want to know that they're in that genuinely for the long-term potential of this technologically. So thank you for being so transparent. Now let's explore more of the business partners. Let's explore that in relation to rather what BlockCloud is doing in terms of moving forward. In the sense of, so your strategic partners that you have, some of them are focused on building out the business side of BlockCloud. So tell us a bit about those partners in the sense of moving forward now and building your business out.
Sure. So we are first we are going to deploy BlockCloud in CERNet, and this is one of the commercial ISP in China, and we are going to transfer our original IoT business to BlockCloud, and this is very small business. And for our collaborators, we have attracted about 10 IoT product manufacturers to BlockCloud, and 5 of them have signed a contract with them with us.
Congratulations, that's quite significant. Are they big companies, Zhongxing? Are they large companies that you've signed with?
Some of them are big, some of them are medium.
Okay, and you can't tell us yet?
For any reasons, I can't, but I will let you know.
Sure, no problem. So what other companies, sorry to interrupt, what other companies, sorry to interrupt you?
Well, and we also collaborate with a number of promising blockchain technologies like NEO. So we got investment from NEO, and we are going to NGC, and we are going to closely collaborate with NEO, and we also got investment from Wave. So we are going to closely collaborate with Wave, and we are also closely talking with WTC, well, the Wharton chain. So it is
supply
also
chain?
Wharton.
Is that a supply chain focus?
Not a supply chain. It's maybe. So it is also a IoT chain. It's an IoT chain. Yes. So we are going to collaborate closely in the IoT area. So
yes,
NIO,
because they are quite prominent in China in
yes,
comparison to IBM, I understand.
yes, yes. So Wave and NIO are not IoT at all, really. So that means that we are not limited to IoT. We can support IoT like C, and we can also collaborate with Wave and NIO, and we are also, so for any reasons I cannot see now, but we also have got a number of other blockchain promising technologies.
That is interesting. So you're
Yes.
looking at other blockchain platforms and collaborating with them. I'm looking forward to talking to you more about them. Now, if we could talk to you about your tech for a moment. Obviously, there are other partnerships coming. We'll look forward to talking to them. But the tech itself, you have a thing called the SCN. Many people would not know exactly what that is, and you've built into it. Can you tell us a bit about what that is, and why that's beneficial to essentially your underlying physical network?
Sure, that's a very good question. So SCN represents service-centric networking, and it's actually a slim overlay between the application layer and the transport layer to make applications directly talk to service names rather than IP address. For example, now if an application wants to connect to a service, it must specify the exact IP address behind the particular service. But now the application just need to write something in the socket that I want to connect to maybe Harry Potter dot Zhongxing, who Zhongxing maybe the provider or something.
Yep.
So
as the identifier.
Yes, identifier of those service, and network will automatically find the service for the application. The application doesn't need to know where the service is, what the IP address of the service, and if the provider of the service moves, it doesn't matter. The application do not need to care about those kind of things anymore. It just very simply connect to a service name and leave the remaining work done by the network itself.
I see. Once again, freeing up, the role that the network itself plays to do its job. Now, if we could talk about another mechanism built in to also facilitate, and that is your proof of service consensus mechanism. Tell us a bit about that, because obviously, once again, the service is the buzzword for your blockchain. What does it do, and why is it different to all the other consensus mechanisms that we've seen?
Yes. So that's a very important reason why we are using blockchain, because we do need a fully scalable, decentralized mechanism to guarantee that services are trustable. So we learned the idea of a proof of storage of IPFS. So in IPFS, there are lots of miners in the network challenging the storage provided to the network. And if the storage is fake, the storage provider will be punished by the smart contract, right? So we learn this, but we extend this idea to proof of service. By a service is regarded as a combination of 5 semantics, as a storage, memory, data, bandwidth, and computation. So the service miners will constantly verify those 5 semantics of the service, and to prove that the service do exist, not fake.
I see. So they're authenticators in that respect.
Yes.
Okay.
And so why we also need to use blockchain is that we do need the economy side. So whenever a service provider wants to publish a service to the network, the provider needs to deposit the tokens before publishing the service, and the amount of tokens is proportional to the value of the service.
Interesting.
So if the service is fake, okay, the provider will be punished and the token will be removed from his wallet. So in this way, we prevent this. We verify the service
And then you also ensure the quality of it because you have that punishment built in.
Yes.
So that it's a value-focused approach.
Yes.
Interesting. So can we talk now about your CoDAG ledger in that it's also part of the structure? You have a compacted DAG. Why have you done this, and what relevance does it have to your overall technology?
Okay, thank you. So because we do need to provide a economy to the network, so the service providers can be guaranteed to get profit. So we do need to record the transactions between the user and provider. So a codec is used to record the transactions. And why did we design the codec is because we do need a very scalable and fast mechanism to record the transaction. And for DAG-based structure, we think that it's a very scalable to large-scale network. And why do we need a compacted DAG is that if in iota Tango, or we believe that it's a randomly growth and the structure of the DAG is not very good, so we want to make it structured so the speed can be bounded. We have mathematically proved it in our white paper, and it has better security protection for protecting double spending attacks. And also, codec is a hybrid consensus mechanism with similar ideas like standard tokens. So, yes, the codec structure is used to select the most honest and well-behaved nodes to record the ledger.
And is that done in a randomized sense, or is that done in an...
No, not randomized.
Okay, can you explain to us why it's not?
So this is why we need a structural DAG. So we use a feature or we use a metric of connectivity of the node as the way to select the miners.
I see. So it's a very finite way of selecting the nodes to build it out. Now, I want to talk to you about parallel scaling, because we've seen the buzzwords of child chains, side chains, main chains being the fundamental. In many respects, the DAG ledger or the CoDAG ledger is designed to do this. So how exactly are you planning on establishing this parallel scaling so that you can build out scalability on your blockchain?
So that's a very good question. So we believe there are two directions. One is that we do use the hybrid consensus mechanism. So the DAG in our system is not very much like the Tango. It doesn't record do the recording of transactions by the DAG structure itself. It's done by the supernodes, very small group of supernodes. So if the network is sufficiently large, you cannot make everyone to do the recording. It must be very slow. So you must limit the number of nodes doing the recording thing. So that's what we are doing. So if we want to scale, we can adaptively choose the number of nodes and the distribution of nodes in the network to make it adaptive to the network. This is one way. And another way is that we do need to provide some localization to the network. So if the network is sufficiently large, we can make the codec slice by slice. So for two aspects. One is theoretically, and another is from each vertical business, we can have a codec for that vertical area
I see. So they can be spliced and they can be specific
Yeah.
for each
Yeah.
function in each node. Now, obviously, we're talking about scalability now, Zhongxing, and I wanted to talk to you about numbers. In testing that you've done, now you mentioned the word theoretical. And that's always an anomaly to me because obviously we want to see more than that and we want to hear you speak of testing in the lab itself. So what can you tell us about not so much the MVP but more of these demos that you've done in-house?
Sure. So, frankly, we have just finished the theory of codec and proof of service. We are deploying the test bed for that in our GitHub. So you will be able to see something in our GitHub soon. But for service-centric networking, we do have a lot of results. So currently, we have a very small demo in our GitHub, and it is proves the concept of name-based communication. And we also have a deployable full version of service-centric networking, but for NDA reason, we will release it in the future. But I can tell you that for service-centric networking, the speed of recovery time from a moving scenario is milliseconds. So, but now the TCP/IP is not seconds or milliseconds; it's forever because the connection is closed.
I see. Yes. So you're really transforming that in that respect. Now, if you could tell us a bit more about your team now, I want to talk to you about that because you mentioned before about the academic credentials, but I want to talk more about the nature of the team in that predominantly they are, from my understanding, from China. Is that right? Many of them? Not all.
From so most of us are from China, but we do have Americans.
Okay, so let's talk about that and why. Where are you focused? What do you want to do? And tell me more about the skill sets of your team. In that, are you trying to lead out into a global situation with this team? And you know, what sets your team apart? What makes you so strong?
So, from various aspects, first, we are mature. We are basically a group of academic people who have been doing frontiers of the internet for many years. And another perspective is that we beyond academic research, we also have been operating a business for 6 years, and we do understand the industry. And for that business, we have got 8 million users around the world in 173 countries, and we have got 3 rounds of investment from good VCs. So we do understand the industry. And for the third perspective is that we are a mature team that have been working together for many years. We are not temporary team. So the core members of our team are basically classmates and roommates and advisors during our student time. So we have been knowing each other for a long time and collaborating with each other for time.
And like you said, you're talking about the top universities in the world technologically, or you know, we talked about Princeton, Tsinghua. There's so many in your list. Now let's move across to your advisors. This is where I really want to talk to you about that. You have one of the largest lists of advisors I have ever seen. Why do you have so many?
Why do we have so many? Because those advisors did advise us during the past 10 years of our research. And when we didn't plan that. It's a bit surprising that all of them accepted our offer and agreed to be our advisors. So when we talked to them, so we are going to do this, and we want your name to be listed, and we want you really advise us for BlockCloud. Can you do that? So they said yes.
I see. Makes a lot of sense, but the reason I ask is because other blockchains do get asked, obviously, for many different people to be part of their team, and they quite simply say no to many. You've said yes to a lot of them, so hopefully you see their value add in every instance, because obviously there's a finite amount of offering that is provided by blockchain, any blockchains, including BlockCloud, in terms of the sheer amount of time you have or the resources that you have. So the advisors, no doubt, have a clear role to play. Each of them.
Sorry.
So do all the advisors have a clear role to play? The reason I just want to be really clear. What I'm saying is, I've seen in some blockchain projects that some of them are just token advisors. They do actually nothing or very little. But do each of the advisors have a specific role in BlockCloud?
Yes.
Okay.
Lots of advisors are expertise in very vertical areas of internet technology. So BlockCloud is a layer 0 solution. It's a very complicated system rather than a simple dApp or a simple chain. So we do need advice on service-centric networking, distributed system, peer-to-peer networking, security, and database, and all kind of things.
Okay, so that's the kind of thing I was hoping you would say. Quite simply, you know, if I'm sitting down trying to understand more of BlockCloud, I want to hear the specifics of why you onboarded these people. Now, let's move across to some more challenging things. Let's talk about ICO first. Now, my understanding is you are in an ICO phase. You're currently in the early stages of this. Tell us about, tell us everything. Tell us about lockups. Tell us about the rounds. Tell us about the price. What can you tell us? Okay,
sure. So we started the project by the end of last year, and we did a seed round in January, and the seed round investors are Genesis Capital and an angel fund, and the seed round was a 2 million. We raised $2 million US. At that time, the valuation of the seed round was $50 million US, 50. And now, after 5 years operation, we grew a lot, and we are doing our private sale currently, and we are raising $12 million US for private sale.
So 12 million private sale.
Yes, and the valuation of the private sale is $80 million US, 80.
That's important to know. So the valuation you put on that is 80 million, which is quite high, but obviously not the highest we've seen. Not by a long shot. Oh, sorry, 18. Did you say 18? Yes, 80.
80 million.
Yes.
80. Yes.
So 80 is the total valuation you're talking about. As I said before, we've certainly seen significantly larger valuations of other projects. So how are you feeling positioned in that sense of an $80 million valuation?
So because we do understand that it's not very high actually for comparing to such kind of projects. So many academic.
Well, can you do that for us? Can you compare it to something else?
Something else?
I mean, it's important we do that, because if you're suggesting that it's not very much, I mean, it's got to be comparable to something else. So what is it that you know is expensive, for example, if you're saying that 80 million is not so much?
It's not so much. So I don't want to mention the names maybe, because
sure. I mean, people can research it though. There certainly are a lot out there that have
half
$500 million valuation.
This is because we are not doing a project for raising money as our first goal. We do want the project to go in the long term, because we want to involve the internet. And to do this, so we must keep the project and the valuation to be healthy.
Right, so you want to keep the ecosystem flourishing, and so that's why you've got this arguably, I won't say lower high because that's too subjective, but certainly you have an $80 million total valuation.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned before a 12 million private sale. Let's explore that in terms of lockups and how that plays out for the person who's investing at that point.
Sure. So for the lockup period is for the investors. We have 20% of tokens released during the token generation event, and after that, 2 months later, we will release 10% of the tokens each month.
I see. So is there a lot of transparency about this? And I want to ask you one more thing very directly, and please forgive me for being so direct. It's just that we are now in a climate where we need to be. With regard to some of the previous projects we've heard, there's been a lot of FUD actually about non-disclosures. That in fact, in many instances, there's been situations where there's been private deals had in the background. So is this a one-stop shop in terms of private sale for those people investing, or are there special deals being done that we don't know about?
No. We guarantee that all the investors have the same term. We do not negotiate the price. We do not negotiate the term. And every one has the same, the fair situation. We guarantee that.
Okay, so now, thank you very much for being so direct about that. We do appreciate it. Now, if we could talk about your crowd sale as well, Zhongxing, what's the plan there?
We are going to do, I'm not saying whether or not we are doing crowd sale. So we are going to officially announce that. And I do not say yes or no, but we currently what I can say is that we definitely do a proof of care or proof of contribution.
I see.
To the individuals. So anyone contribute to the project will have the opportunity to participate in the tokens.
I see. So you're taking a more meritocratic approach and rewarding people for their input and arguably in quality. So that's interesting that you're doing that. We have seen that done in the past. So we're not going to see things like a random airdrop.
Airdrop?
Yes, we're not going to see random airdrops in the future that are just distributed for people just because, for no reason. In the sense, so what I'm saying is you're not planning on doing that.
We are not likely to do that.
Right. Okay, that's good to know. Now, obviously, let's talk about exchanges. Let's talk about also, pardon me for forgetting, but let's talk about also your team. Has your team got a vesting period for a long period of time so that we can ensure that your team are there for the long haul?
Sorry, I didn't quite follow.
Your team, for their own tokens, obviously there's a mechanism built into your design, so they are rewarded for their work. Is there a vesting period for your team itself? Usually we see a number of years where the team cannot access their tokens.
Are you saying the lockup period for the team?
Yes.
Okay. So we have 5 years of lockup period. So
that's a very long time.
Yeah. So because we are confident about the project, and we will release our team tokens 1 year after the token generation event, and at that time we will release 25% each year.
I see. So obviously,
So
you've really built this out right from the outset to be something very long term. Now let's talk about exchanges, because obviously with all the advisors you are talking to different exchanges now. Have you set any in motion? Are you well and truly in the direction of going onto the exchange? And if so, are they good exchanges?
Yes. So we have got the investment from OKEX. That's OK Blockchain Capital, and we have also got the investment from KuCoin. So I believe that we cannot guarantee that we will be definitely listed on a specific exchange, specific exchange. But we have got the investment from those 2 exchanges, and so and we have built a close relationship with them, and also we have got investment with some other exchanges.
Okay. And you can't tell us yet? Sure. Well, I'm wondering about some of the bigger ones. You can imagine the ones in my mind, no doubt. Clearly you're talking to some that you can't tell us, and we'll discuss that further, so I don't want to put you in a very awkward position. Now, I want to ask you a little bit more about some of the criticisms out there just in the blockchain space and in the crypto space. One of them is the argument that perhaps, chicken before the egg, in that, and you've already made it clear that you are an academic team and that you've been doing this for a very long time. But I want to ask you quite frankly, with the backing from large VCs, there's been a suggestion in the community that I want to put forward that you're driven more so by a VC than you are from the grassroots academic value that you bring. So what would you say to that if someone said to you, look, it looks like that a VC's backed you and you've built this from the ground up as a result. Is that the case for you, or are you in fact something far more than that?
If I understand that question correctly, so does it mean that we are building the project for VCs?
Right, especially some of your bigger backers.
That's a very good question, because long before VCs are involved, we are doing research in this area, and we have been building systems in this area without any support from VCs.
Yeah.
So,
John, can you just move your camera slightly, because I just want to be able to see you. Sorry. That's okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
This is a great answer. So I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of this.
So no matter whether there is VC or not, we will do research in this area, and we will deploy system in this area. So how we can prove that is that 10 years ago we don't have any VC at all.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up. Now let's talk about your roadmap as a potential criticism, in that some people would argue that it's quite long term. So what would you say to those people who are saying you are thinking more of the short term game?
A short term game?
The short term game in the sense of, if we compare your roadmap to, let's say, some other projects. Some are doing their main nets faster, some are doing things, rolling out things very rapidly. So what would you say to those people who are perhaps, have a different perspective?
So I think we are doing different things in different layers. So if you say that I can do a better TCP IP within 3 months or within 6 months, so I must be a liar.
Right.
We don't be a liar, so we want to be honest. So to do this kind of thing, you do need time.
Sure. Yeah, your audio has changed slightly, so it's a little bit difficult to hear you, but thank you for explaining that. Now let's talk about your incentive mechanism. Now you're building in a reward system, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that. What sets you apart as this sustainable, rewarding economic system that you've built in? Because you incentivize through what's known as a sustainable, rewarding economic system.
You mean so? For the service providers, they can earn tokens, and so we are kind of a public exchange, so app developers and enterprises can build applications and our system to issue their own tokens. That's another kind of incentive.
Right.
So very much like Ethereum.
Okay. Well, just one more thing I want to ask you about. That's with regard to your marketing, because you've been really transparent. I really appreciate your time today. Now, your marketing, many people don't know about BlockCloud at the moment, and it's graduating in terms of the spread that's happening in the crypto space. But how are you approaching your marketing right now, and what's your strategy?
That's a very good question. So that's another answer to why we are not doing a VC thing, we are doing a real thing, because we are doing extensive global meetups. We have traveled to America, Japan, Korea, and Singapore, and we are going to Australia next month. So we do want people to understand what we are doing, to know who we are, and to understand what we can provide with them as a better internet. And we are not doing something like random airdrops or candies. We achieve all the members in our community. Now we have a 35,000 users in our Telegram, and are attracted by what we are doing, not jobs and candies. And also we are building extensively building developer communities globally. So
is that in a GitHub sense in terms of, have you got groups that are built into, are they Telegram, are they WeChat groups? What are these groups?
So
your research groups?
Not a Telegram group now, but you will soon see it.
I see.
Because for our investors, we choose global investors from Europe, Canada, America, Asia. So one of the reasons we choose them is that they can help us to build the developer communities, and also we have a number of traditional VCs rather than token capitals in our list, so they can help us in the future to involve industries and enterprises to BlockCloud. So that's our strategy.
I see. So you're obviously focusing on the community in a multitude of ways. You're thinking about social media, no doubt, because I have had a look, and you do have various means of people accessing social media via different mediums. You've also said that you're doing the grassroots hard work, which is going around the world as your team and standing on stage to teach more about what you're doing. So, and I have actually met you before. I've been at the blockchain conference in San Jose, so that was a privilege to have done that. And I was impressed by the presentations that you did show in terms of professionalism, from my own objective position, I suppose, or subjective one in that sense. But what I did want to ask you now, Zhongxing, is do you have any final statements with regard to what you'd like to say to the people who fundamentally matter to the ecosystem with regard to BlockCloud?
So I want to...
Sorry, it's just a little bit hard to hear you. So.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah.
I'm alive?
Yeah, it's much better. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I want to say that connections makes people happy, and we are happy to make better connections, and we are BlockCloud. Welcome to join us.
Absolutely. So you've heard it from the CEO, from Zhongxing. BlockCloud's doing something that arguably is a world first in the sense that it's a service-centric, layer 0 TCP/IP design, leading the way as an architecture to connect every dot. So thank you very much. As the CEO, I appreciate your time. I know it's very late for you, but it is important that the people of the world do get to understand exactly what you're trying to do and to really explore the veracity and the quality behind your project and your team. So once again, thank you very much. This is Brad Laurie, or BlockchainBrad, signing off, but thank you very much for your time, and we'll look forward, BlockCloud, to hearing about you more, and particularly you as the CEO to provide us updates as you build what it could be, and arguably will be, some kind of project that will make a difference in the technological space.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.